Okay, hello, so we're live. So welcome to the Node.js package maintenance team meeting for August 25th, 2020. We will follow the agenda as outlined in our issue, which I'm just pulling up now. I'll paste the link to the Google Minutes doc to the chat so people can add themselves as attendees. And I'm just going to do that myself as well before I get started. Okay, so first of all, the first issue on the agenda is communicating that only the latest version of a major release line is supported, number 393. And I think, Dominica, you had kicked that one off.
Yep, let me just open that up. And just so that I remind myself of the details. Yeah, so as we were discussing CI config Travis, basically the default setup of CI config Travis and of Travis in general, if you leave out the specific version, if you just say install the major, it will install the latest version in that major, which means that if you're a package maintainer, you're effectively only testing in by default with the most conventional configurations out in the wild and the recommended setups, right? You would only be testing in the latest version of any major release line. However, in the engines field of package JSON, the engines field is Semver compatible. Right, so you're meant to enter a Semver range in there. Most of the people would put in, say, 14.x or something greater than 14, which means that technically speaking, strictly speaking, when you are communicating that in your package JSON's engines, you are meant to support all of the versions on the 14 release line, even though you're only testing in the latest version. So even if you're, say, communicating that via your package support, that you're only supporting the latest version, right? And that is what we recommend, because you're only meant to be running the latest node version in production, right? You're not supposed to be running something like 14.0.0 because that has known security vulnerabilities and probably bugs that were fixed later. However, Semver does not allow communicating that in a automated fashion, right? You could be bumping the engines field every time you actually change the requirement. However, that could be sort of construed as something that requires a new major release of your package, right? So suppose your engines communicates that you support 14.0.0, yet you start using a feature which was introduced in 14.3.0, and all of a sudden your package no longer works in 14.0.0, which means that you're essentially changing a requirement, which means that you should be bumping major. So there is no way to sort of communicate that. That's one issue. And the other issue is that the recommendation of, you should only be supporting the latest line is actually potentially could be releasing breaking changes without a Semver bump, which my personal opinion is that it is fine. However, that is a sort of technicality that maybe we should see if there's a way to address that.
Well, it's Semver minor, right? Like it's not breaking changes, but you can't go back, right?
Yeah, so if you start using a new feature, which is not available in the earlier version,
right,
that is effectively a breaking change in your package, unless you communicated that explicitly that you only support the latest version.
Right.
So as soon,
yeah, okay. So really any Semver minor, if you use any of those versions, it's kind of like you're saying that it's even, you can even move up to a Semver, well, no, I guess if you move to a Semver major, then that's implicitly,
yeah.
I'm just thinking you could make the same argument if you could go up to a Semver major, and if you don't use any of the things in that Semver major, maybe it's not actually Semver major to your users, right?
Correct. That is that is what some people do. Is that they explicitly release a new major version with a new major requirement of Node, even though there's no breaking changes. Right. They sort of pre-bump the major so that they can be free to. But yes, in theory, if you're not using any new features, then but that also means that you don't have to drop the old version, and you can keep on testing, say, in Node 8, and you can communicate that this still works in Node 8. That is sort of a slightly different requirement.
So I have well, first I want to say that is the approach that Express will probably be taking with 5, right? The code is still compatible, but it's just going to bump the engines field and call that the breaking change. So that is definitely a use case, I think, to make clear is a pretty good practice, I would say. But I was going to say, separately from that, what really we're talking about here, I think, aligns well with NPM's engines output, like when it processes the engines field, respecting those aliases we defined. Because those aliases do explicitly say this alias points at the tip of the current branch of that, whatever that is. I think, and I made this point, I think at some, I can't remember, it's been a while, but I really think the engines field should support those aliases. Because really what we're doing is it's not that the code is actually breaking, like you say, right? What we're saying is this is what we support. So the engines field even today is intent, right? Obviously, NPM tries to interpret that intent to install a version that has a compatible engines field, but really still, that could still be broken, right? Like the point is the author is saying, I intend for this code to work in the Node 14 latest, right? Whatever, I think we have I guess that would be latest, right? Currently. And anything else, well, your mileage may vary, right? I mean, that's really what the engines field is telling them. So I would actually like to see NPM adopt those aliases, even though, yeah, that would be a breaking change and it would be different from what the ecosystem expects today. But I think it's actually more accurate to the way folks use the engines field in practice. Because again, like you said, people say 14, right? Like in practice, they're saying greater than 14. They don't necessarily mean that, because they may start using one of those new features that lands in 14, and like I almost guarantee across the ecosystem they're not bumping the engines field for that.
Yeah, definitely not. This came out of a discussion on CI config Travis that maybe the CI config Travis configs should explicitly also include .0.0, just so that you can double check that you're not introducing inadvertent breaking changes. In the end, we sort of came to the conclusion that this is not what the ecosystem expects, right? Strictly speaking, this is the correct thing to do, but that's not the reality in the world. So we didn't do that. There is a plan to introduce a way of doing that, but right now the defaults there do not. So yeah, it's only like everybody's only testing in latest, and everybody recommends you use latest, and everybody assumes you use latest. I know of packages that do explicitly call out a specific up to the patch release that they support as the minimum version, but I think that's in the minority.
And it's not a bad practice for them to do that if they add a new feature, if they adopt the usage of a new feature. Like I would expect a package to do that, even to the patch version, whatever it actually requires. But like realistically, folks shouldn't have to do that. Like we've set up a system where they have to do that. But really what we're saying is before you come and report a bug, upgrade your node version to the latest in your major version range. Because otherwise, like we're probably not gonna, like most package others aren't gonna say add a fix specifically for a non-latest in a major, See,
that's where I agree that everybody, my understanding has always been, if you want to get a fix, you got to go to the latest. But that is subtly different from, as a package maintainer, I could still say that's the case. Like if you want to fix, it's going to be in the latest. But I could be careful not to avoid using anything that was introduced that wasn't in 14.0. in which case that still holds. Like if you want to get a fix, you're going to have to go to the latest, but you will never, that avoids you being forced to go to a newer version of Node just to get a newer version of the package.
Which is technically correct. Totally get it. And I bet you if Jordan was on this call, he'd be like,
he'd be like, yeah, I totally do that,
right?
right? Yeah.
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 But like realistically, most people don't. And I think if we're trying to push things forward, I think recognizing that is probably the, you know, we just need to, we need to optimize for the most common here, not necessarily technically correct.
Yep.
It's kind of like if you're going to do an update, you're going to have to make sure that part of your update is updating to the latest in your stream of Node as well.
Yep, and that is the issue here is how do you communicate that? Because the engines field has no way of communicating that.
I mean, we can in the support, like we've got those aliases, which, you know, I don't think we've clearly spelled out.
Yeah, exactly. They don't.
So we could go back and either spell out in those that we mean you better be on the latest, or we could have two variants, one which basically, you know, is you have to be on the latest of that stream, or the other one is, you know, we commit not to force you to move up in terms of features, but still, if you want to get a bug fix, you got to go to the latest.
So I think that's the choice of the maintainer. I think we can say in our specification for the aliases, we can say if you want to use these aliases, what we mean is latest of the range. If you don't want to abide by latest of the range, which we recommend as best practice, then you need to use a semver range, which is already perfectly fine because then they're already doing that, and it's gives them the freedom to be very narrow in how they want to define their engines field. If they wanted to say, I support 14.0, oh, but there was a huge breaking change that was a security fix in 14.0.1, I don't want that, but I want everything above that, you can use semver ranges to do that today. Right? So we don't need to solve for that case in the aliases. The aliases are just there to be the like, here's our best practice recommendation. And our best practice recommendation is stay at the tip of Node in a major range if you want to get proper support.
Right. And I mean, and I guess what you're saying is the other one where it's like, you know, it's they will, you know, make sure that it continues to work on all versions of 14, not necessarily, but you'll still have to move up to get bug fixes. It just means they won't use any new features. That's not common enough to have like a predefined alias. That's
what I think, yeah. And it's already supported by basic semver ranges. So we're not like excluding them. We're just also saying, look, these aliases are for the common case, not you.
Right, yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, but if it was a common enough case, it would still make sense to make it easier to express that. But our starting point is that won't be very common, so let's just clarify what we meant in the ones that we do have.
I agree on that. I would love to hear if I can't remember when I brought it up to y'all at NPM. So Rory, do you remember this conversation, and did the NPM changing or NPM supporting that in its engines field ever get any traction?
The only thing I do remember about the engines in NPM 7 is that arborists do take into account when creating the install tree. Like in the latest version of the beta, I'm pretty sure like it won't break, it won't fail for if your engines don't match. But I think if it finds two packets and one has an engines field that satisfies your install tree, it will prefer that one, even though you might have a new greatest semver version on top of that, right? So I think it will prefer, but it will not avoid just installing your packets in that case.
And then what is it doing today with when it doesn't find one that satisfies? Is it erroring or is it just warning still?
I'm not even sure if it warns. I think it warns you, but Yeah, I think there is a strict mode, an opt-in with a config that you can make it break if you want. But today, I'm pretty sure it's just a warning.
Yeah, I'm guessing most people don't use that though, right?
Yeah, and oh yeah, if I remember correctly, it was one of the first bug fixes I did when I joined the team. The warning wasn't even being printed. So it was one of the first things I fixed on npm 6. So it does print the warn, but if you want it to fail, you need to use an opt-in flag. Yeah.
I thought so because I added an engines thing to one of my internal projects just recently because a user reported it breaking. It was internal, so I'm not, super strict about how I do some of these things when I'm working on them. But
Right.
and I was like, hey, but I added an engines field. Did you not see the warning? And he did not see the warning. So,
Right.
but the point stands though. I think it's all about intent, right? Like if the code's going to break, the code's going to break,
Yep.
whether your engines field is defined correctly or not, right? So I think if npm were to accept these aliases, print a warning, then I think the users would be served better than they are today in that, than by the authors having to maintain a either loose semver range where they don't really test it correctly, or a very meticulously maintained semver range in their engines field, which, like, again, I'd say Jordan's probably like the only person doing. If he's even doing it, I don't know. I don't know of anybody else doing it.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. We should definitely bring that conversation to the OpenRFC call. Yeah, because I just don't see, well, how to get there, but I do see it like it makes sense. It's something that makes sense to have.
Is there any opportunity or overlap with CI tools like GitHub Actions that allow you to run your, again, I suppose you'd have to have CI as a prerequisite, of course, but with something like GitHub Actions, then it becomes a little bit easier to take that engines range and put it into a matrix and then get a little bit more confidence in the support that you do declare, or rather that as you add things, it's like a form of regression testing in a sense.
I did bring up. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's kind of related to where this came out of, right? Dominicus was working on the entries for our CI configs, and some of those CI configs were intended to match what we've got. Like, if you say that you, in your support field, this is what you intend to support, the config is meant to sort of roll along so that you get that level of testing automatically. And that's where this came out of. So I think part of the CI part may be covered by that piece. If we can get the alignment there. But I guess there's still a potential gap between that and what NPM actually validates and does when selecting versions for you.
And also, I don't think I've run into it for a while, but does NPM, like if you run an NPM install and the engines doesn't match, does it still fail and halt the install completely?
No, yeah, I think that's an opt-in thing today in npm 6.
Okay.
Let me see if I found the name of the config.
Sorry, I missed the first part. So is that still the behavior? That if you have an engine for like node 12 and you're on 10, it'll stop the install completely?
I think Roy was saying he thinks it might be opt-in.
Yeah, there's a config, so you should npm install --engine -strict. And that should make your install fail in case you have a mismatching engine in one of the install packets.
But it's not by default anymore.
No. Yeah, that's what I'd say. Like it's an opt-in because by default it's turned to false. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, because there is that, and I know that I think it's been touched upon so far in this discussion that support, the engines is really good, but maybe you forget. Maybe that's one thing that you forget to bump. So how does it? It kind of becomes another part of the maintainer's checklist, right? Like kind of like a Babel thing. It's like for every, PR that comes in, you have to double check that the feature is, was only introduced in 14.10, not 14.6 or things like that. So it's almost like, it actually reminds me of a neat Babel ESLint plugin, right? Where there's a tool called browsers list where you can define the browser support for your particular project in Babel, and those kind of transpilation tools will leverage that. And if you're using modern browsers, it only transpiles to modern code. So there's an ESLint plugin where if you have that browsers list, it'll actually tell you like, oh, hey, this feature, you're trying to use promise and your browsers don't support promise, it'll fail you, something like that can maybe help keep them in sync. I don't know, because now we're talking about GitHub Actions and then NPM engines, but I think in general, the topic here is, what's most intuitive. And maybe it's one of those things where like, if a maintainer wants to opt in and explicitly define minimum requirements because like, hey, I want to use this new thing that's literally only in node 14.10 and up, like, it's not just 14, then, you can add that fine grained control to protect your users in a sense so they don't, install it, then it breaks, and now they're like, is it me? Is it the dependency? Node, whatever.
So I linked something. I did bring this up a little bit. It was a while ago, and I threw the link in here. But basically, when I first posted this, was like, look, we shouldn't. This is way early in the actions. It was before like they went out of beta, and I said, look, you shouldn't launch this if you have matrix support, and you require people to update their config every single time a new node lands, which is the current state today, and it's the current state in Travis and all these others. It's just a bad experience, right? So like what my idea was to them was, hey, if you support these out of the box via some sort of alias or template setup or whatever it needs to be, you're just going to be giving your users a much better experience. I haven't seen any real action on it, and then like a bunch of people who just seem to have totally no connection directly with a lot of the node stuff came in with these alternate proposals, and then it just sort of died on the vine as far as I can tell, and has been sitting here. And my last comment was March 8th, so I don't anyway, I think this is a great thing, and I think if the entire node ecosystem, including npm, including yarn, the main maintainer of N is working on this. I brought it up to NVM. Like, if we actually get everybody supporting the aliases, then I think we have a pretty good way to say whole ecosystem supports this. Start using it. You'll get the benefit right away. The problem is today we can't do that until we get these tools on board, and GitHub Actions is pushed back. Jordan pushed back because he didn't want to do time manipulation in NVM, and I understand that. And then, yeah. Anyway, my point is, I think there's a lot of moving pieces when you talk about how does CI end up adopting this methodology. And it's way more than just like GitHub Actions supporting it, or Travis supporting it, or us even having tool. We need to actually have like buy-in from all of these tools that manage node versions before the real benefit's going to come into play, I think.
Right, but I think
But also go comment on those issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think having the configs in place though is a concrete step that can help people start using them. I think in terms of this issue, because we have used half the meeting already, next step are for us to open a PR to update the support docs to clarify what's meant. If we believe that the common use case is really just the tip and that you'll have to move up to the tip to potentially get a new version, we should clarify that. That hopefully answers your question, Dominicus, in terms of what we want to do in the configs. Because again, if our argument that it's a very non-common case, those configs are not meant, they're meant to give the common cases, right? If you can do something else if you want. And then it sounds like the other action would be to restart the discussion of NPM supporting those definitions. Does that sound like the two next things we want to look at on that front?
Sure.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
Wes,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to mention if you want to bring it onto the agenda for the RFCs of NPM.
Yeah, this
Speaking
may
of
be one.
RFCs, just a quick double check. Are we meant to create issues or discussions for that?
For the second one, we probably want to open an issue to track us doing something for it. And then, like, I guess you're talking about opening issues in NPM or opening issues in our, yeah, okay, yeah. So sorry, right. So yeah, go ahead.
The RFC process, is it the discussions or the issues? Because
sure, right, yeah, we've been experimenting with the discussions, but it's also fine if you just want to open an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me take this because I have been meaning to open up an RFC, which I have still not done once. So this one is one that I've been involved with for a long time. So maybe I can actually do some write up here and actually try to write an RFC PR to get the ball rolling, because I think I understand most of what's needed, and I could probably write, I think, a technical write up. So I'll take that on. I'll probably do it later this week would be my guess.
I have written in Wes has the action. In terms of updating a PR for updating the support docs, any volunteers for that?
Yeah, okay, I'll take a look into that. And then I think what I will do is I was planning to do that this week anyways. I will be updating the README files in CI config Travis, and I will be including some examples, and I'll mention that, you know, there is this sort of problem. And I guess there is a good practice. If you want to go an extra mile, then you should be explicitly including the minimum version in your Travis CI setup. I'll add an example for that. And you should be bumping major when you change that requirement, if you want to go that.
If you're going to if you're going to make that commitment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but we won't necessarily have default configs that does that for people.
No, that's not feasible. That's because the default config means that for us to generate that config, it means that people would have to change their Travis YAML anyways, because they need to change the import. So they may as well just change the version explicitly in their YAML file and get the rest automatically. So it would be just explicitly include your minimum version in your Travis. So I'll add it in the readmes there. And yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna drop a link in the chat since I know that Wes's link from NPM mentioned aliases. I know there's another conversation in the node release channel about the understanding of aliases like LTS. So if we incorporate aliases into the specification, it would seem that the understanding of things like LTS are consistent or made consistent across the ecosystem as well. May or may not be super relevant.
Yeah, are you talking about the conversation about what maintenance means or something else?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, okay. I'd seen that, so. Okay, so that sounds good. Let's, unless somebody has something on that one, let's move on to the next issues. The next one was suggest ignoring a vulnerability by the package maintainer. This one, we tried to get a few people together. I think, unfortunately, like Darcy was then going to be on vacation, and I didn't actually get back to see if we could get Liran to this call. So maybe for the next call, we'll try and arrange that. Is there anything that we should discuss on this one this week?
Do we want to do a deep dive of this? Like, I know that was sort of the intent for the last one, but.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking. Maybe I'll try and see if, like, I think Darcy would be back next time, and I'll see if Loran can make it, and then, basically with people from both SNCC and NPM to represent that discussion, we could do a deep dive.
if we post an issue, I'll also ping in. I've had regular conversations about this with a few other folks who might be interested in dropping by the meeting, even though they don't normally come to these. So,
okay. We have an issue, but I guess we can post in that issue that, you know, we're going to try and focus on it in this meeting.
sorry, yeah, that was what I meant. But if it's just a matter, if we would just want to use that issue as tracking, that's fine with me. I didn't mean we need a new one necessarily.
Yep.
I just thought maybe we were going to have one to plan us time. But
No, it's a good idea to, like, I mean, there's an issue to talk about that particular, well, it is 386, that's what's in the agenda, but yeah, posting in there that, hey, we're going to focus this meeting on discussing that would be good, so that you can let other people come as well. Okay, anything else on that before we move on? Okay, if not, the next one is PKGS org for WBG supported tooling. That one, I think our next steps is really just to kind of audit what we've got and make sure we're ready for a switch to move it into the under the node.js governance, or actually even just start to do some of that because we've already got agreement to do it.
we do, but there's still some outstanding things here. I mean, I guess we could check off, like, we've got grant access. I'm just going to check these off while we're here. Define a process for adding new members is done. Explicitly adopt governance is done. So the two-factor auth was the thing I was saying we don't have.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so
and so I've added folks on to packages in the NPM side. That's clearly not scalable. So I'm wondering what we, like, it's more than just two-factor auth, right? Because we also need to just like automate the access granting thing, right? Like, did I add anybody else as an owner of the NPM org? I can't remember.
I don't know.
I don't. Last I checked, I didn't have.
Right. So basically, I think based on what we wrote down, I think like all the, whatever we call it, administrative members should be added as org owners.
Okay. I'll probably need their NPM credentials. And also, I would love to turn on required two-factor auth, but the only other person I've added, and I'm not going to call it out on stream here, but needs to turn on two-factor auth.
Okay.
So I will reach out on that, but we should make sure that's a requirement, is everybody on the org should have two-factor auth. So
agreed. Okay. So yeah, so that last thing. Okay, so we'll do. It sounds like you'll take a few steps in terms of adding people as org owners, and then maybe, you know, I'm pretty busy, so I'm not sure whether I'll have time in the near future, but, you know, try and get to the point of just looking at our, you know, who has what, have we met all the requirements we kind of wrote down, and then I think finally add like the TSC members and everything like that, and you know, change the accesses so that it's aligned with the Node.js org, and like the moderation team can access it and that kind of stuff.
Right, we do need to change that. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do to make that possible. Is it just a manual, like, add everybody thing, or?
Yeah, that I'll have to figure out. Like, there's possibly a team that we're going to have to duplicate or something like that. There may be a few teams like that, actually. May require, like, when people become TSC members or when they join the moderation team, they get added to the teams in both of the orgs.
I started a GitHub action for that, but it never got.
Right.
Nobody else helped, and I went off and stopped.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to, like, basically keep teams across, synced across orgs. That would be interesting.
Yeah, that's specifically what that one's for. So we have this on Express for the triage team, right? So when we add new triage members, I have to go update all three. I specifically started this to solve that problem, which would also solve it for us here. So if anybody wants to take that over, it's a GitHub action. It's, I think anyway, go check it out if anybody wants to pitch in.
If any one of us gets in enough pain of adding people, we'll bring that back up, right? Okay.
There's also the housekeeping PRs. I still have 6 open. We should, yeah, I need somebody to look at them. And oh, this one.
Which ones are those? Are they in the PKGS repo?
Yes, in the PKGS repo. Okay, this one actually has the approvals. Just gonna merge that now.
And that
there's
is
5
under...
repositories.
While we're making progress here, Dom, is your your NPM handle the same as your GitHub handle?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm going to add you because I think you're currently the only other owner on the PKGJS org. But I offered it to others if they, but nobody said, yeah, I want that. So
yeah, we should just add them.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can add me as an owner to PKGJS, and
so
that'll
these
let me
PRs,
sync some of the node ones. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, these PRs, I have an issue and it has them linked somewhere. Let me just get that. Housekeeping issue 348.
You have the link, you can just paste in the chat.
Yeah. And then it has in towards the bottom, it has all the PRs linked. There's some 5 of them that are still open.
Right. Triage bot status board.
Yep.
NV membership updater and create. Okay.
Actually need to follow up NV. There's this thing.
Michael, your your NPM name is the same as your GitHub name as well?
My NPM one, hold on. I'm gonna have to look that up, and I have a feeling it might be MHDawson1, but I'm not 100% sure, so.
Send it to me whenever I can add you.
Yeah, I will make sure and get it back to you.
But I'm not gonna upgrade anybody to owner until they have 2-factor auth enabled, so.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind, because that would be.
Which I do, so maybe not, or you're talking about on NPM.
On NPM, right, yeah.
Ah, yes, okay. Sorry, in that case, I might have to do something.
Hey, you don't have, come on, folks, we got to get 2-factor auth enabled on all these accounts.
I'll have to double check. Okay, let's see, housekeeping. So I guess though for a number of those, you want reviews from people who've been working on the packages themselves, or?
Yeah, I guess so. Which is Wes.
Did I thought I looked at that one. You're talking about specifically NV, right?
No, I have some 5 of them open. Still open.
I guess membership updater is one of them.
Well, probably because I never finished it. I bet you I didn't even go look back at those ones. So let me. You said there's a list. I'm not seeing the list in that.
I linked an issue in the chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was in another screen.
And at the bottom of that, these all are linked. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go through these ones right now. Sorry for being the delay.
Okay, right, so I guess, yeah. That point, once those land, you figure we're in good shape, right? Is the, okay. So I'm just gonna take minutes. Next actions is get these reviewed, landed. Add access as per governance. Great, into node.js.
Quick question on these. I thought we also had said we're going to use the .github repo. Are we doing that? Because I thought that exists already.
So the .github repo satisfies the strict requirement, but having the link to code of conduct and what else is there? I don't remember. But basically we said that at least the code of conduct, having that at the root of the repo as a file is a statement that we should be making.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Because
just
otherwise
wanted
you
make
need
sure,
to
'cause I was
know.
about to approve them all. Yeah, that makes sense. Also, quick question. Nobody has picked up the create repo at all, and the goal is to actually pivot it to be the basis for this thing that Darcy and I were chatting about.
Right. Yep.
Do we want to just archive? If we archive it, we can't do so. What do we want to do, since the code that's in there isn't the code that we think should be in there? I just had pushed some, this is early on. Do we want, I can move that out and we can then empty the repo? Like,
yeah, I would empty the repo and maybe put a README that has, a description of what we'd like it to be.
You can tag it and just delete it. Yeah, if we think that that code is not needed at all, then we can just empty the repo, or we can archive it if we're not going to do anything with it.
Well, I think the goal is, but Darcy, I think, has been really busy, and I've been sort of working actually on some pieces related to this, just not directly in this repo. Like I have a create package JSON project, which is hopefully would be used in ours, which will do things like, what npm init does, but a bunch of other smarter things, better, more recommendations from us. And then the idea was we'd also come with a generator for the support metadata and a generator for the engines field, or whatever whatever generators we decide. And then the idea would be the create package is the one that actually bundles it all into like a package generator, not just like a piecemeal thing. And the idea would be that that Darcy was talking about, which is like basically make npm init outsource to this package, which would come with all of the best practices that our group defines.
I think getting it into the state where it was what we could, that it was clear what we needed to do on the support side. We might get, like, Riordan has been pretty active in trying to help push that forward. I'm thinking he might have some interest in helping on that one.
Okay, then I can add that to my higher priority list, and obviously I don't know when I'll get to those ones.
Yeah, but just like a couple paragraphs that sort of explains the concept and the pieces, because I think given that, then we could look at like, okay, what's the piece we're going to build that generates the support part, right?
Yeah, and I'd also be happy to make some proof of concept code for this too, because I have been working in this space off and on, for a while, and I'm going to have to do it as part of my normal work, so I'll be definitely involved. So if I can, sorry, I got scaffold some stuff out, that might also help set the direction, and then we can get Darcy's opinion on if that's like if he agrees that that's the good direction. So
I just figure, like, if you have limited time, even just writing up the concept so that other people could then say, I'm going to take this piece and start to experiment. And
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'll add that on my higher priority list.
Your higher priority list.
higher. I could say this is the Z-index problem. I never change the priority. I just add a new layer on top.
Right.
A priority 99999.
Right. Okay, so I think we have the next steps on that one, and we're slowly making progress. Anything more we want to discuss on that one before we move on? If not, then the next one is next steps on support levels and package JSON. I think we're basically ready, and I have on my priority list somewhere to write a blog post that would evangelize and sort of ask people to start using it as a draft that we can then collaborate on. Does that still make sense to everybody? Anything else we should be looking at before or in parallel with that?
Sounds like a good idea. I think we've been here before, though, haven't we? We've got to actually kind of get something out this time.
Well, I think we went back. Before it was, well, we wanted to have a tool that would actually support validation, which we've got. So now I think we've got agreement that we can write the blog post. I just need to find the time to do it. And if anybody, I'm hoping to do that in the next week or two, but if anybody has cycles and wants to write it or help write it, just put your hand up. Don't want to be the blog.
I help review, but I've been doing too much volunteering, and I got to
Sure.
be careful what you volunteer for.
Yep. Okay.
Because you have to complete it.
Yep. Yep. This has got my name on it for now, so we'll leave it like that for now. Okay. And that actually is the end of our agenda. Is there any other things people want to bring up?
Merge 377.
You beat me to it, Glenn. Yeah, I was gonna ask. I must have added the label. Well, let me paste it in. I think I might have added the label too late, but I just wanted to get some help getting closure on this PR. I think it's got approvals, and I just didn't know because there's still an outstanding change request, but I'm pretty sure, hopefully, well, I know Glenn has made changes since those were requested. Now,
So Tierney had some grammar ones, and I think I satisfied them, but he hasn't come back and reviewed it, and it's been a couple of meetings since then. And I don't want to start doing the integration one until I do this one. And I made a few promises in this one, I think, to Dominicus about putting things in and linking back again. But this comes under the be careful what I promise thing, because I already have several approved PRs in several places, and they're not getting merged, not just this repo, but other repos.
Okay, so basically you
I think we
you've
satisfied
updated
Tierney.
it,
Yeah.
right? And it's been, so it was July 25th. It's been almost a month. I would be happy with, I think, merging.
Okay, it's been merged.
Anybody else got any concerns?
Not that I think we should have too much official process all the time, but do we have a process for if somebody has a dissent, but then the dissent is resolved, but the person doesn't come back and comment? I think Tierney would come back if he knew. He probably just missed this. But in the case of some maintainer actually disappearing, do we care to have a process for that? Like, to me, it seems reasonable to just say after a month of having resolved their things, if they don't come back, like, then their dissent is no longer valid or something.
That was actually yeah, why I didn't, well, that was for me the part that wasn't clear, or what the SOP would be in a situation like this.
So
Yeah, I guess we actually have that listed, and it says no blocking reviews. Or, I mean, I guess we want to add to that maybe that says or agreement of the working group members to proceed or something like that.
Yeah, let me change that because I wrote the original thing about the time thing. Let me go away and create another PR and amend it, and we can discuss that in the next meeting. But let's merge this meanwhile, so I can get on with the other one.
Who watches the
Technically,
okay, I just merged.
Technically, I'm not sure we should be doing that. I mean,
oh, my finger slipped. It's not code, it's text. I can change text, but otherwise it's going to be outstanding forever. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think there's also a case to be made that the longer our work remains out of mainline, the further it is from the the people we want this to reach.
Yeah.
What is good enough? Not to discredit the work done, but it's like how many laps are we going to have, Glenn?
Yeah.
Dom, do you have specific concern about the action that was just taken? Is that, like, I understand that it's technically not a part of our governance, but like it does seem reasonable, right? Like if we're going to think about amending the governance, maybe this is fine.
I think governance defines a process for conflict resolution, for dissent, and there's the consensus seeking process, right? That is defined. And so, I mean, maybe we should have followed that. But I think in this case, maybe we should have given Tierney a chance to get back or raised another specific issue there. So I don't know.
we did ping him,
Yeah.
direct- and that was 19 days ago. So
Summer.
I think that's it, because I have some other PRs waiting on him too. When I said I have several, they are waiting on just one approver.
This is what I'm just pasting in what a comment we could make on the issue, but I mean, I think we're discussing, we don't necessarily have consensus, but this could be the, that we'd not had a response from the originator of the last objection, and we believe the objection had been addressed.
mhm.
Right, so it's kind of like we're not sure there is an objection anymore.
Yes. You found
And
some typos. Yeah.
It's been a month.
Yeah, and I guess that's an interesting point to. I don't know if this is like shedding too much, but is there a distinction between feedback for a typo versus feedback like this? Code doesn't have tests, or this concept doesn't align with the vision of the team. Is there are there degrees of
One thing I've done in the past, and we could maybe recommend this to other folks who find typo type updates, is you can still make the change requests and not say requesting changes, right? Which would indicate you're not blocking, you're not dissenting, you're just saying like, here's a few small fixes. Sometimes when on GitHub you have that, but like we have a lot of like Stash or whatever, Bitbucket, and doesn't have quite the same nuance to the way you do review. And I always, when I have something where it's like this, I just say, this is not blocking. Like, do not consider this, blocking, merging this. And that would be another thing we could just tell people is, be clear if you think you want to make a change. If you don't think it's actually a dissent, please don't mark the PR as requesting changes or something like that, or make it clear that you're not dissenting or something.
fair. Yeah.
I think going forward, we should at the very least explicitly call out that, that we want to do that.
I agree.
And give the person a chance to respond explicitly with a request that, have we addressed the comments, and there's an agreement that these have been addressed, and just get some more grace.
But how long? Is there ever a time limit with that? Is 20
So
days?
we do have a couple of time limits defined there. Yeah, I don't know. It's just that it's just what I'm saying is that it's not enough to just ping the person, but we need to explicitly start a counter saying that this is the counter and this is what we agree that should be done in case of no response.
Well, let's update the docs to reflect that, and I'll create a PR to do that, and we can look at it in the next meeting, saying we explicitly need to create a counter, ping them and say a counter has started. If no feedback is had, we're going to proceed, but you have this amount of time, and we can just change the dates on it as we feel best. So let me do that. I think I wrote the original. Docs on that.
It's good to see,
Well, while you're writing that, you might also, the TSC is often, like if there's a stalemate on the node side, it can be escalated to the TSC, and then by consensus of the TSC, we basically say, okay, we're overriding the objection, it can move forward.
Yeah.
So I think there should be that, probably through the administrative members or all the members or something, some combination of the members could take that decision. Because we can get into the case where they could be very active still, but just say I object and don't agree.
Yeah, I think there's a little room for, I agree that, in a situation like this, specifically requesting, or with a countdown or something like that. So that way, if you are, maybe because part of it is if you are leaving feedback and you are applying a hold, then it would seem that as a professional courtesy that you would, maintain interest or activity in said thing, right? To help move it along, or else, this PR might have been, around for 2 more weeks. And then at what point is, a large body of work getting held up for a typo? Not to, cast generalizations, but, just trying to balance the, the impact of all things.
Makes sense. So next step is, Glenn, you'll submit a PR to the governance to
Yep.
basically propose how we handle these kind of situations so we don't get stuck.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah, let me do that. I'll take that as my item.
Sounds good. Any other issues that people want to bring up?
Yeah, just a quick note on CI config Travis. So as I mentioned, I'll be updating the READMEs there. Once those are up, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to start asking people to use it. And I think I'll probably start with things wherever it's used in Node.js.
I think that's a good idea.
Possibly.
Yep.
Yeah, that's.
Yep. It's a good place to sort of validate what's going on.
Yeah. So I guess the process will be I'll start an issue in a repo.
Yep.
Start with the oldest ones possibly, or whichever feels. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And I had one question, and I maybe just am missing this in my memory, but did we come up with a process for proposing new PKG.js projects? Or are we still sort of on the go by, just do what you want?
I'm pretty sure that's
the
in there.
charter does. Yeah, it defines what you need to do to start a repo. Whether a project is worthy or not worthy to start a repo, that's another discussion. But I guess that can be always discussed in an issue, right? Starts with an issue.
Okay, I have something I've been working on that I think might fit. It's one of the things we've talked about in Express with utilizing scopes, and in order to properly utilize scopes, we need to migrate a bunch of packages. And so we're discussing different approaches, and just so happens I've had to write something for work that I think that does that, and I think it might work for open source stuff as well. So I was thinking about that might be a nice thing under the PKG.js org, since it would help. I don't know if y'all remember the big Babel migration, but it was painful and a lot of work. So I know. I'm gonna
have to run, folks, for my next meeting.
Yeah, it's over. I'll bring it up.
I just pasted you the link there, though, Wes. If you want to grab that, that's the section that describes how to request adding one.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. I think we're at time, so we will talk to everybody next time and in GitHub. Talk to you later.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.